In the book, Understanding the Decline in American Social Capital by Dora Costa, the author speaks about how only 8% of Americans have reported spending an evening with their friends, which is extremely crazy to think about, the individualism that we find in our American society. What are we missing as a society? Maybe we're missing a little bit of social interaction. Maybe we're missing a little bit of social responsibility. And with that note, I want to introduce the Japanese honor culture, which has a lot to do with social responsibility. In the book, The Japanese Mind, by the author Davies, he speaks about the word giri. Giri is a word that means social responsibility, and that is very, very important to the Japanese society. And we want to go back a little bit. As the Japanese honor society evolved, it came from the samurai class of feudal Japan, and the word Bushido, which we get the definition from the Encyclopedia Britannica to mean the way of the warrior. And the way of the warrior has a lot to do with that word giri. That's social responsibility. What was the responsibility of the Japanese warrior? Well, the Japanese warrior was responsible for protecting the people, and they were the ruling class of Japan. And that has evolved into a society nowadays that is very focused on the social responsibility of not only the ruling class, the government, but also the responsibility of society as a whole. Like, how can I be responsible for my actions in society? How can I be responsible for the way that I behave? One of the very common examples that might be shared, fairly recent example, is that in Japan recently, the toll road system broke. And instead of holding up traffic, the government said, hey, let's just let people pass through, and we're going to ask that they pay that money back to us later. And instead of kind of holding on to that money, over 30,000 people went back into their own pockets and decided, hey, we're going to pay this toll, and it's not really that big of a deal. I was going to pay it anyways, but the road was broken. And that sort of integrity is very important to the Japanese society. There's a lot of different mannerisms, sort of cultural norms, and they have a lot to do with humbling themselves before other people. How can I be the best that I can towards you? And that has a lot to do with Japanese society nowadays, which has evolved from this very sort of crazy, stereotypical samurai culture into something that is very, very useful nowadays. In the book Japanese Culture by Paul Varley, he speaks necessarily about how the West tends to see Japanese honor culture with a very American lens. Let's look at history and what American history had to do with Japan. And that comes back to kamikaze pilots, sort of these very crazy like examples of honor that's been shown towards the government. And we gotta look at that for what it is. It's a wartime sort of crazy example of what people are willing to do to serve their government and quote unquote protect their nation. And so we can see that as a very, very extreme. But for what that has to do with honor, the way that society operates in Japan today has a lot to do with honor as well, and all the things that they do, all the things that sort of help their society move along. How in workplaces a lot of decisions are made for the good of the whole, the good of everybody. How the government, for example, serves the people. I'll put a picture up here on how the government rebuilds this road super quickly, and that's something that we might be missing from our society. So with all of that being said, we want to leave with the takeaways. What can we do as a society to sort of mirror this honor culture, that social responsibility, and sort of make it our own? And so let's look at that example of the government. What can our government do to be more socially responsible to our society? How can we push the government to be more socially responsible. Maybe it's honoring, maybe it's sort of electing new people that we will have that trust in, that they will do what's right for us. Flint, Michigan's a great example of how we might be missing some of that government accountability. Another way that we can look at it on how we can make that better in our society is single parentness. A lot of people have kids and they kind of just, it's not my responsibility, and leave it to the other parent. How can we as a society say, that's not okay, it's your responsibility, you need to go back? And I think that's another way that we can do that. It's through that social call to do better. And those are very important things. We need to respect each other. We need to humble ourselves to our responsibilities, and we need to hold the bigger people accountable, like the government. So I hope you enjoyed what I had to say about that Japanese honor culture today. Thank you so much for listening.